Folks, picture me, Abigail Thornton, a spry 28 summers old, standing on the snowy porch of my childhood home in Willow Creek, Vermont, Christmas Eve of 24. My boots squeak on the frost, my arms laden with gifts wrapped finer than a banker's promise. 3 years I'd been gone, living my Boston life, and here I was, heart thumping like a rabbit's, expecting a welcome warm as cider. But when that door swung open, there stood my sister Margaret, eyes sharp as a hawk's, and she hissed, "You ain't welcome here, Abigail. Skedaddle 'fore you spoil our holiday." My heart cracked like river ice in spring. Through the frosted glass, I glimpsed the family, Pa, Ma, Brother Daniel, all laughing round the Christmas table, candles flickering like stars, Ma's best china gleaming, maple syrup pie steamed by the window, mocking my empty hands. I managed to choke right then and turned, the snow swallowing my steps. That moment, friends, was colder than a Vermont January and twice as lonesome. Now, before I spin this yarn further, where you watching from? Drop your town in the comments, give that like button a tap, and subscribe to this channel for more true tales to warm your heart, or break it. Hit that bell too so you don't miss a story. I'd fled Willow Creek to Boston, where my advertising job at Carver & Sons Advertising gave me purpose, and a shoebox apartment felt more home than this clapboard house ever did. Willow Creek, population 7,924, was the sort of place where folks knew your first pet's name and your worst schoolyard tumble. My folks, Henry and Eleanor Thornton, ran the town bookstore, pillars of the community. Daniel kept their ledgers. Margaret, my elder by 2 years, planned every town shindig, the golden gal Ma always bragged on. Me? I was the odd duck, scribbling stories, dreaming of city lights. That porch, them bitter words, why, they were just the start of a Christmas I'd never forget. As I sat in my rental car, the engine cold as my hopes, I pondered the road that led me back to Willow Creek, Vermont, and the family I'd left behind. 3 years I'd called Boston home, where my desk at Carver & Sons Advertising was piled high with campaigns, and my colleagues didn't whisper my childhood mishaps over coffee. My 100-square-foot apartment, costly as a king's ransom, was a palace compared to the Thornton family's bookstore-lined house, where every shelf held a memory and a judgment. Willow Creek was a speck of a town, 7,924 souls who'd known me since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. Pa Henry Thornton ran Thornton's Tomes, a bookstore passed down like a family curse. Ma Eleanor taught literature at Willow Creek High, quoting Shakespeare like gospel. My brother Daniel, steady as a plow horse, kept the shop's books after marrying his sweetheart Clara and setting up house 2 streets over. Then there was Margaret, my sister, 2 years my senior, the town's darling, homecoming queen, valedictorian, now orchestrating every festival from maple tapping to Christmas carols. She'd wed her college beau, Nathan Reed, and lived the life Ma's rulebook demanded. Me? I was the square peg, always scribbling tales for the school paper, dreaming of Boston's bustle while Margaret shone at bake sales. The riff started soft, like a whisper. Ma sighs when I chose writing over teaching, Pa's tight-lipped nods when I spoke of leaving. The break came at my college graduation supper. Margaret, expecting her first, turned my moment into her baby's name reveal. Ma prattled on about cribs. Pa tried steering talk back, but the damage was done. When I snapped later, Margaret called me selfish. Ma took her side, and Pa's peacemaking was but a bandage on a festering wound. 2 weeks after, I took a job in Boston. Calls grew scarce, texts scarcer. Thanksgiving invites came with strings, if you ain't too busy, and I dodged them 3 years running, blaming work when truth was I feared the cold shoulder waiting. Margaret's life was the Thornton ideal. Mine was the oddity, tolerated but never celebrated. Yet here I was, drawn back by Pa's voice, earnest as a preacher's, begging me to come for Christmas. That plea stirred something deep, making me pack gifts, a signed novel for Margaret, coffee for Pa, a quilt for Ma, and drive through Vermont's snowy hills, hoping to mend what time had torn. Little did I know, Margaret's venom at the door was but the first gust of a storm brewing in our family's heart. Now, friends, let me tell you how I came to stand on that snowy porch in Willow Creek, Vermont, heart racing like a colt at the county fair. 'Twas the December of '24, and I, Abigail Thornton, had spent 3 years in Boston, where the city's clamor drowned out the whispers of my past. But a single call from Pa, Henry Thornton, turned my world like a windmill in a gale. His voice, rough as burlap yet warm as hearth fire, carried a plea I couldn't shake. "Abigail, darling, we miss you. Come home for Christmas just this once." Something in his tone, earnest as a prayer, hooked me like a trout. I ain't one for rash doings, so I planned careful. Took leave from Carver and Sons, where my advertising work kept me busier than a squirrel before winter. Booked a flight to Burlington, rented a car, and drove 4 hours through Vermont's snowy hills, the landscape shifting from Boston's brick to the familiar pines of my youth. I rehearsed safe talk, weather, work, nothing to stir the pot. Gifts I packed, chosen with care. A quilt for Ma, hand-stitched by a Boston seamstress. Maple roasted coffee for Pa, bold as his spirit. Wooden puzzles for Daniel's young'uns, Noah and Lily. And for Margaret, a novel signed by her favorite author, nabbed through a work connection. I hoped them presents might bridge the chasm 3 years wide. Driving into Willow Creek, I felt time slip. The town square's fir tree, decked in lights, stood proud as ever. Storefronts glowed with tinsel, and the bookstore, Thornton's Tomes, wore a wreath Pa'd hung since I was a girl. I parked a block from home, needing a moment to steady my nerves. My phone buzzed, Pa's text, "Can't wait, darling." That gave me grit. I gathered my gift bags, their ribbons bright as hope, and trudged through snow to the house I'd known all my days. White lights framed the porch. A wooden star Pa'd carved gleamed above the door, familiar as breath, yet foreign after so long. Standing there, breath clouding in the chill, I felt the weight of what I'd left and what I'd come to reclaim. The doorbell's chime was a summons, and as I waited, snowflakes dancing around me, I braced for warmth or a storm. Little did I know, Margaret's words, sharp as a razor, were about to cut deeper than any Vermont winter, setting the stage for a Christmas reckoning none of us could have foreseen. There I stood, Abigail Thornton, on the porch of my kin's home in Willow Creek, Vermont, Christmas Eve's chill biting my bones like a hungry hound. The doorbell's echo hadn't faded when the door flew open, and there was my sister Margaret, her face tight as a drumhead. Her eyes, usually bright as a summer stream, were shadowed with something fierce. "You ain't welcome here, Abigail," she spat, low and mean. "Get gone, for you wreck our holiday." It was as if she'd swung a skillet at my heart, leaving me stunned, the gift bags in my arms heavy as regret. Through the frosted panes, I glimpsed the Thornton clan round the dining table, laughing under candlelight. Pa carved the turkey, sleeves rolled up like always. Ma arranged her heirloom china, the kind saved for Christmas alone. Daniel and Clara fussed over their young'uns, Noah and Lily, while Grandmother Beatrice, silver hair aglow, presided like a queen. The maple syrup pie steaming by the window mocked my empty hands. They were a picture of joy, complete without me, as if my absence was natural as snow. "Right then," I choked out, voice frail as a whisper, and turned, the snow swallowing my steps. The walk to my rental car was endless, each crunch through the drifts a stab of lonesomeness. I set the gifts, foolish now with their bright ribbons, on the passenger seat and slid behind the wheel. The engine stayed silent. My hands shook too fierce to turn the key. Tears came quiet at first, then in sobs that rattled my frame, fogging the windows till the house's warm glow was but a blur. 3 years I'd built a life in Boston, thinking I'd earned my place. Yet here I was, cast out like a stray, the family I'd crossed mountains to see dining merry without a glance my way. Should I drive off, find a motel, catch the first flight back to Boston? My practical mind spun plans, but my heart, bruised and baffled, couldn't move. Margaret's words weren't just cruel, they carried a weight, a secret strain in her eyes I couldn't name. Why such venom? What had I done to earn this exile? The Christmas lights on the porch blinked on, cheerful and cruel in their ignorance. I pressed my forehead to the steering wheel, lost in the ache, when a shadow moved through the snow, a figure running, calling my name. The night, it seemed, wasn't done with its surprises, and Willow Creek's secrets were about to spill like wine on a white tablecloth. In the icy hush of my rental car, parked a snowball's throw from my kin's home in Willow Creek, Vermont, I sat, tears freezing on my cheeks like dewdrops on a winter morn. Margaret's words, "You ain't welcome here," rang in my ears sharp as a church bell tolling bad news. The Christmas lights of the Thornton house glowed through my fogged windows, a cruel reminder of the warmth I'd been denied. I was pondering a lonesome drive to some nowhere motel when the front door burst open and out came Pa, Henry Thornton, running through the snow in his Sunday shirt, no coat to shield him from the December bite. Abigail, wait," he hollered, his voice cutting through the silent flakes, his dress shoes slipping on the icy path. I wiped my eyes quick. Pa never could abide my tears, and rolled down the window. He crouched low, breath puffing white clouds, his gray eyes earnest as a preacher's promise. "Darling, come inside," he said, voice trembling, not from cold but conviction. Margaret had no call to say them things, none at all. "Seems clear enough how folks feel, Pa," I replied, my words hollow as a dry well. He shook his head fierce, snow gathering on his thinning hair. "That ain't true. You're mine. I been counting the days till you came. Daniel, too. Even Grandmother Beatrice asked when you'd arrive." I raised a brow. "But not Margaret?" Pa sighed, shoulders slumping. "Margaret is carrying a burden, Abigail. She's jealous, plain and simple. Jealous of your writing, your Boston life? Jealous? The notion was as wild as a fox in a henhouse. Margaret, the town's darling, with her perfect family and festival crowns, envious of me?" Pa leaned closer, voice low. "She's been working on a novel, secret-like, for years. Poured her heart into it, but it's been rejected by every publisher from here to Boston. When she heard you were coming home, your stories printed in fancy magazines, it stung her sore. She's scared you'll outshine her, show her up as a failure." The truth landed heavy, like a stone in still water. Margaret, hiding a dream in a wound? I'd never guessed. "That don't excuse her, Pa," I said firm. "It don't," he agreed, surprising me with his steel. "But don't let her push you from the rest of us who want you here. Come inside. For me." His hand squeezed mine through the window, warm despite the chill. I nodded slow, heart warming like embers stirred. Together, we gathered the gifts, and with snow falling soft as grace, we walked back to the house where a reckoning awaited under the Christmas star. Back into the Thornton house I went, Abigail Thornton, trailing Pa through the snowy porch of Willow Creek, Vermont, like a lamb to a questionable shearing. The warmth of the dining room hit me like a summer breeze, but the faces round Ma's heirloom table, set with china fine as a governor's manners, were colder than the drifts outside. Margaret sat rigid, staring at her plate like it held the secrets of the ages. Ma, Eleanor, fussed with the cranberry sauce, her smile as tight as a miser's purse. Daniel and Clara managed awkward nods while their young'uns, Noah and Lily, fidgeted with napkins. Only Grandmother Beatrice, silver hair shining under the chandelier, rose with arms wide. "Abigail, my darling girl," she cried, hugging me tight, her lavender scent a balm to my bruised heart. "Well, now everyone's here, let's eat," Ma declared, voice bright as tinsel but brittle as glass. Pa guided me to a seat by Beatrice, far from Margaret's glare, a wise maneuver. The turkey was passed, the maple syrup pie sliced, but my appetite had fled like a spooked deer. Margaret's earlier venom, "You ain't welcome," hung heavy. and her silence now was louder than a church organ. Yet she couldn't resist a jab. "Boston must be so glamorous," she said, fork poking her potatoes, her tone as sharp as a whittler's blade. "All them city lights must be hard coming back to our little town." Pa shot her a look could 'a' curdled cream. "Abigail's doing fine at Carver and Sons, right, darling?" I nodded, grateful but wary. "The Harbor Inn chain," I said, "biggest campaign yet." Clara perked up. "Harbor Inn! Even I've heard of 'em. Mighty impressive." Margaret's lips fanned, and Ma, quick as a cat, steered talk elsewhere. "Margaret's planning the Willow Creek Literary Festival," she said, pride dripping like syrup. "Tell Abigail about it, dear." Margaret launched into her plans, each word a subtle dig at my city ways. Beatrice patted my hand under the table, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "Hidden talents run deep in this family," she said, glancing at Margaret, who flinched like she'd been stung. That cryptic remark stirred my curiosity. Pa's talk of Margaret's secret novel lingered in my mind. The meal limped on, conversation a dance on eggshells. Daniel tried safe ground, asking about Boston's weather, but Ma kept circling back to Willow Creek doings I knew nothing of. My jaw ached from smiling polite, each bite tasting of the exclusion I'd hoped to leave behind. The Christmas candles burned bright, but the chill in that room was a storm brewing, and I sensed the night's secrets were far from spilled. The dining room in Willow Creek, Vermont, glowed with Christmas cheer, but the air was as thick as molasses with unspoken grudges. I, Abigail Thornton, sat at Ma's table, picking at turkey while Margaret's jabs and Ma's favoritism stung like nettles. The meal was winding down when Margaret stood, tapping her glass with a spoon, her face alight with a smile I'd not seen all night. "Nathan and I have news," she declared, her voice proud as a peacock's. "I'm organizing the Willow Creek Literary Festival, a celebration of stories right here in our town. It's my legacy, keeping our roots strong." Her eyes flicked to me, sharp and meaningful. "Some folks might chase city fame, but I believe in family, in staying where you're loved." The words landed like a slap. Pain in her life is noble, and mine is selfish. The table clapped, Ma beaming, but something in me snapped. 3 years of hurt boiling over like a kettle left too long. I set my fork down, stood, and faced 'em all, heart pounding like a blacksmith's hammer. "Congratulations, Margaret," I said, voice steady as granite. "But since we're sharing truths, it's time I spoke mine." The room hushed, Pa's face creasing with worry. "For 3 years, I've tried keeping this family close from Boston. I've called, sent gifts, invited y'all to visit, offers never taken. I've swallowed your barbs about my writing, my city life, thinking that's what kin do. But tonight, Margaret told me at the door I ain't welcome, and this meal's been a parade of slights." I turned to each in turn. "Pa, you've tried, but you've let this fester, never calling out the wrong. Ma, you've made my work feel like a betrayal, praising only Margaret's path. Daniel, your silence ain't neutral, it's choosing sides. And Margaret, you've not just pushed me away, you've spread tales round town, calling me arrogant, turning folks against me before I even arrived." Gasps rippled. Ma flushed, Daniel squirmed, and Margaret's eyes blazed. "That's a lie," she snapped, but her voice shook. Grandmother Beatrice, quiet till now, raised her hand. "The girl speaks truth," she said, voice firm as oak. "I've watched this family tear itself apart, favoring one child's way over another's. Shame on us all." Her words landed heavy, and for the first time I saw cracks in the Thornton facade. Margaret's face crumpled, Ma looked stricken, and Pa's shoulders sagged. The Christmas candles flickered, but a new light, raw and painful, began to shine, promising a reckoning that might just mend what was broke. The dining room in Willow Creek, Vermont stood still as a frozen pond after my truth-telling. The Christmas candles casting shadows on faces struck dumb. I, Abigail Thornton, had laid bare the Thornton family sins, and Grandmother Beatrice's words, "Shame on us all," hung like a storm cloud. Pa, Henry, broke the silence, voice firm as a judge's gavel. "We need to talk, all of us, no more dodging. To the conservatory, snow or no, it's time for plain speaking." We shuffled to the conservatory, a glass-walled nook Pod built when I was a girl, filled with Ma's ferns and wicker chairs. In winter, with the heater humming, it was a cozy spot to watch snowfall. I settled on a love seat with Pa. Ma took her favorite rocker. Daniel leaned by the door, and Margaret perched on an ottoman, far from me as she could get. Beatrice, wrapped in a quilt like a prophetess, claimed the armchair, her 93 years given her reign over our reckoning. Pa spoke first, eyes on me. "Abigail, I owe you an apology, deep as a well. I've tried keeping peace, but I've let this rift grow, thinking silence was kinder than strife." He turned to Margaret. "And you, girl, owe your sister words for that porch cruelty. 'Tweren't right." Margaret stared at the floor, arms crossed tight. I fixed her with a steady gaze. "Why, Margaret? What have I done to earn your hate?" She flinched, then whispered, "I don't hate you." Her voice cracked like thin ice. "I'm jealous, Abigail. You left for Boston, writing stories folks read in magazines. I've been scribbling a novel, hiding it for years, and every publisher's turned it down. Your success, it burns me, shows me up as a failure." Tears spilled, and the room went quiet as a graveyard. Ma, Eleanor, shifted, her face softening. "I've wronged you too, Abigail," she said, voice wavering. "I had a writing dream once back in college. I let it go for Willow Creek, and seeing you live mine stirred envy I never named." Grandmother Beatrice nodded, her eyes sharp. "Family's a tangled vine. Cut it or tend it, but don't let it choke. You've named the rot, now mend it." Margaret looked up, tears streaking. "I'm sorry, Abigail, for the porch, for the lies I spread." Pa squeezed my hand. "Stay, darling, let's start fresh." The conservatory's warmth wrapped us, snow falling soft outside, and for the first time I felt the Thornton clan might unravel its knots, not with ease, but with honest labor under the Christmas star. In the conservatory of our Willow Creek home, with snow dusting the glass walls like sugar on a cake, the Thornton family sat, raw as peeled apples after our truth-telling. I, Abigail Thornton, felt the air shift like a river finding a new course. Paul's call for honesty had cracked the ice, and Margaret's confession, her secret novel, her jealousy, lay bare 'tween us. Grandmother Beatrice, quilted like a sage, presided over our wicker council, her eyes urging us to mend what was tore. Pa spoke, voice steady as a plow. "We ain't fixed, but we're startin'. Abigail, will you stay, not at some lonesome inn, but here in your old room?" His plea carried years of quiet support, from slipping me cash in college to framing my first printed story in his bookstore. I nodded, soft as snow. "I'll stay, Pa." Margaret, still perched on her ottoman, looked up, eyes red but clear. "I'm sorry, Abigail, true, and congratulations on that Harbor Inn account. It's something." Her words, simple but earnest, were a bridge, frail but real. Then, surprising us all, she reached for a satchel by her feet. "This," she said, pulling out a stack of papers, "is my novel. Ain't nobody seen it but publishers who said no. Tell me how to fix it." The vulnerability in her ask was a gift, and I took the manuscript gentle, like holding a bird. "I'd be honored, Margaret. I said, meaning it. Ma, rocking slow in her chair, added, "We're seeing a family counselor come New Year. Dr. Harper in Burlington. She's helped folk untangle worse messes than ours." Even Daniel, quiet till now, nodded. It's time we talked proper. Beatrice smiled, her wrinkles mapping a life of wisdom. "Pie's waiting inside," she declared, "and no family squabbles too big for maple syrup pie." We laughed, tentative, and rose, the conservatory's warmth lingering as we shuffled back to the house. Margaret walked beside me, our steps matching for the first time in years. "You're a fine writer, Margaret," she said, quiet. "I'm proud, even if I didn't show it." I touched her arm. "And you're a fine mother, Margaret. That festival will be grand." It wasn't full peace, but it was a start, like seeds sown in spring. The Christmas tree lights twinkled as we re-entered, the smell of pine and cinnamon promising better days. The Thorntons weren't whole yet, but we turned a corner, and that night, under Vermont's starry sky, I felt the faint stirrings of a family finding its way back to love. 1 year later, friends, I stood again on the snowy porch of the Thornton home in Willow Creek, Vermont, my heart lighter than a feather in a spring breeze. I, Abigail Thornton, 29 now, had no quiver in my step as I rang the doorbell, the chime echoing like a promise kept. Through the frosted glass, the Christmas tree twinkled and laughter spilled out warm as cider by a hearth. The door swung wide, and there was Pa, Henry Thornton, sporting a garish Santa apron I'd mailed from Boston, red as a cardinal and twice as loud. "Abigail, darling," he roared, wrapping me in a bear hug that squeezed the chill right out. Right on time as ever. The house smelled of pine needles, maple syrup, and something deeper, hope, reclaimed like a lost heirloom. Stepping inside, I shed my coat, marveling at how different this Christmas felt from the last, when Margaret's venom had near froze me out. The hallway, lined with family photos, told a new tale. Gone was the stale parade of old snapshots. Now fresh frames gleamed, a shot of me by Charles River in Boston, pen in hand. A group hug from my summer visit, all Thornton smiling, and most touching, a picture of Margaret and me cradling her newborn, Samuel, named part for our uncle, and part, bless her heart, for Sam's bookshop in Boston, where I'd taken her last spring. That year, you see, wasn't just a turn of the calendar. It was a rebuilding, board by board, of a family that had near splintered apart. True to his word, Pa had marched us to Dr. Harper's office in Burlington the day after last Christmas's reckoning. That first session was like pulling teeth with a rusty wrench. Awkward silences, defensive grunts, and tears nobody wanted to claim. Dr. Harper, sharp as a tack and patient as a saint, had a knack for naming the knots we'd tied ourselves into. We committed to monthly therapy, me joining by video when Boston kept me away. Progress wasn't a straight road. There were stumbles, old hurts resurfacing, Ma's stubborn streak, Margaret's occasional backslide into competition. But session by session, we chipped at the ice, and truth, once spoken, became our hammer. I changed too, friends. No more hiding my Boston life like a gambler's ace. I shared the rough patches, lonely nights, campaigns that flopped alongside the wins. When Pa visited in March, I showed him my world, the newsstand carrying my stories, the diner where I scribbled ideas. His pride, quiet but fierce, mended something in me. Ma came in May, stiff at first in Boston's bustle, but by the end she was laughing over coffee, admitting she'd misjudged my path. The real miracle, though, was Margaret. After Samuel's birth in July, she called, voice weary from midnight feedings, confessing she felt swamped by motherhood despite her polished front. That crack in her armor let us talk true, sister to sister, not rivals. By August, she'd sent me her novels draft, the one she'd hid for years. I read it, heart racing, and saw not just talent, but a story only Margaret could tell of Willow Creek's heart, its secrets woven like threads in a quilt. I sent notes, gentle but honest, and when she revised, I connected her with a Boston editor friend. Come October, her book, Maple Shadows, hit shelves with a dedication that near brought me to tears. To Abigail, who showed me courage ain't leaving but stand to fight. At her launch in Thornton's Tomes, I stood beside her, clapping loudest as Folkestown bought copies, Ma beaming like she'd birthed the book herself. This Christmas, the Thornton house buzzed with a chaos that felt right, not forced. Noah and Lily barreled from the living room, wrapping round my legs like vines. "Aunt Abigail," they squealed, showing off paper snowflakes. Margaret followed, Samuel on her hip, her smile free of the strain that haunted her. "You made it," she said, and the warmth in her voice was a gift. Ma emerged from the kitchen, flour dust in her sweater. "Abigail, help with the pie crust. Mine's crumbly as gossip." That simple ask from a woman who once saw my help as a flaw was progress sweeter than maple. Grandmother Beatrice, 94 now and frail since a spring spell, sat at the kitchen table, supervising with a queen's grace. "Brought any Boston rain, my writin' girl?" she teased as I kissed her cheek. "Just for months' snow," I grinned. The kitchen hummed, Daniel slicing carrots, Clara mixing cider, Pa checking the kirky. Talk flowed easy from Boston's fog to Willow Creek's festival. When I mentioned my latest story in a national magazine, Margaret raised a glass. "To Abigail's words, shining bright," she said. "No trace of the envy that once poisoned us." Ma nodded, pride in her eyes, a new sight that warmed me deeper than the hearth. At dinner, round the same table where last year's storm had raged, Pa toasted. To family, not perfect but trying. To second chances and stories shared. Glasses clinked, and I caught Margaret's eye. Our sisterly bond, once shattered, now mending like a well-stitched seam. After, in the living room, we swapped gifts. Margaret gave me a journal, its cover embossed with a maple leaf, and I gave her a first-edition novel she'd coveted. The kids tore into their puzzles, and Beatrice, rockin' slow, told tales of old Vermont winters, her voice tying us to roots we'd near forgot. As night wound down, I stood by the door, looking out at the snow-draped yard, lights dancing on the white. Family, I mused, is a tangled skein, knots and all. It's the pulling together that matters. Last Christmas, I'd spoken truth at great risk, and that spark lit a fire of change. Healing ain't a finish line, but a trail, and we Thorntons were walking it, step by honest step. Margaret joined me, Samuel asleep in her arms. "We're writing a family story together," she said soft, nodding to a project we'd started, a collection of Thornton tales, hers and mine for Samuel's generation. "Reckon it'll be a bestseller," I quipped, and we laughed, the sound carrying into the starry night. Now, friends, if you've known family strife for mended broken ties, share your tale below. I'd wager it's a story worth hearing. If you're wrestling with kin now, take heart. Truth spoken with love can be the first plank in a bridge. Like this yarn? Tap that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more true tales. Sometimes, knowing we ain't alone in our struggles is the finest gift we can give. Here's to Christmas, to stories, and to families finding their way one snowy step at a time.